Imagine a town so silent, it feels haunted by more than just memories. The wind whispers through empty streets, carrying echoes of laughter and life that vanished long ago. Every boarded window and creaking door seems to hold a secret, as if the town itself is holding its breath, waiting for something, or someone, to return. This is Portlock, Alaska, a ghost town on the remote Kenai Peninsula, its buildings slowly collapsing into the wild embrace of the forest. Once, it was a thriving settlement, home to hard-working families and bustling with daily life. Now, nature is reclaiming every inch, erasing the traces of those who once called it home. Portlock wasn't abandoned by economic hardship or natural disaster, but by something far more terrifying, something that crept into the hearts of its residents and drove them away. In 1950, every resident fled, leaving homes and belongings behind in a desperate rush. Suitcases, dishes, and even half-eaten meals were left as if people expected to return, but never did. Why? They believed something was hunting them, a monstrous figure from the woods, growing bolder and more violent each year. Whispers of a shadowy creature, part legend and part nightmare, spread fear through the community. These were tough pioneers, used to danger and hardship, but something in the forest broke their spirit. Even the bravest hunters and trappers refused to venture out alone. Giant, unidentifiable tracks appeared in the mud, far too large for any known animal. Some claimed to see glowing eyes watching from the darkness, while others heard unearthly screams echoing through the trees. Shadows lurked just beyond the firelight, and every night brought new stories of terror. People began to sleep with weapons close at hand, afraid of what might come out of the woods. The terror was so complete that Portlock has remained empty for over 70 years. The forest has swallowed the town, but the fear lingers, as if the land itself remembers. What could drive an entire town to flee so completely? Was it mass hysteria, or something real and terrifying lurking in the shadows? The truth remains buried beneath layers of myth and silence. The story they left behind is as chilling as it is mysterious. Portlock stands as a monument to fear, a place where the unknown triumphed over human courage. The silence of Portlock tells of a community under siege, a haunting reminder that sometimes, the scariest stories are the ones that remain unsolved. Before the fear, Portlock was a thriving frontier town. Established in the early 1900s, it prospered thanks to a salmon cannery and its strategic location on the Gulf of Alaska. The town was home to native Alutiiq people and settlers from afar, all drawn by opportunity. Life was tough but rewarding. Fishing, logging, and hunting sustained the community. The town grew. A post office, school, and general store lined the bay. Residents respected the wilderness, prepared for its dangers. But as years passed, stories emerged of something in the woods that didn't fit any known threat. Portlock seemed destined for success until the wilderness turned from provider to predator. The fall of Portlock is as dramatic as its rise. At the heart of Portlock's mystery is the legend of the Nantinak. In Alutiiq lore, it's a half-man, half-beast, territorial, aggressive, and deadly. Early residents dismissed these stories as superstition, focusing on real-world dangers. But as the town expanded, the line between myth and reality blurred. The Nantiinik was said to hunt at night, move with unnatural stealth, and hate human intruders. Some called it a shapeshifter, others a beast of immense strength. As strange events unfolded, old legends became the only explanation. Hunters felt watched, traps were smashed, and eerie screams echoed at night. The Nantiinak was no longer just a story. It became a real, present danger. Fear crept from the woods into the heart of Portlock. Portlock's fear was rooted in real, terrifying events that left the entire community on edge. This wasn't just superstition or rumor. Something was happening that no one could explain, and it was changing the way people lived. It began with a hunter vanishing without a trace. No body, no clues. His gear was found abandoned, as if he'd simply stepped out of existence. The search parties returned empty-handed, fueling a growing sense of dread. Then a logger was killed by a massive object hurled from the woods. Far too heavy for any person. The force behind the attack was beyond human, and the violence was sudden and shocking. Locals whispered of inhuman strength behind the violence. Stories spread of something lurking just out of sight, watching from the shadows, waiting for its next victim. Attacks grew bolder, fishermen harassed by something huge in the bay, their boats rocked by unseen forces. Nets were torn apart, and some men refused to return to the water. A mutilated body was found in the lagoon, the injury so severe that even seasoned trappers were horrified. The brutality was unlike anything the villagers had ever witnessed. The wounds defied explanation. Too brutal for any known animal. Claw marks gouged deep into trees, bloodstains in places no predator could reach. Dread spread. People avoided the woods, stayed close to home, and locked their doors at night. Families huddled together, afraid to even look outside after dark. The wilderness became enemy territory, a place where the rules of nature no longer seemed to apply. These weren't random accidents, they formed a terrifying pattern. Each incident was more violent, more inexplicable than the last, and the evidence pointed to something unnatural. Something was stalking Portlock, picking off residents one by one. The sense of being watched was constant, and no one felt truly safe. The community was under siege from an unseen, brutal force. Safety was shattered, and the people of Portlock could only wonder what horror would strike next. As fear grew, so did the sightings. Massive, human-like footprints, over 18 inches long, were found around the village. Eyewitnesses described a towering, hairy figure watching from the ridges or stalking hunters through the woods. One woman saw a shadowy form pass her window, blocking out the moonlight. The sense of being watched was overwhelming. Eerie cries echoed from the hills. These weren't just stories, they were first-hand accounts from trusted neighbors. The footprints and sightings gave the legend a terrifying reality. For Portlock's people, the creature was no longer myth. It was a real, physical presence instilling unbearable fear. Today, Portlock's ruins are silent witnesses to panic. Windows and doors were heavily boarded from the inside, desperate fortifications against something powerful. Inside, belongings remain untouched, cutlery on tables, toys on floors, tools on walls. This was no planned move, it was a frantic flight. Some explorers claim to have found journals describing sleepless nights and giant tracks. The buildings clustered together, as if for protection, now swallowed by the forest. The evidence, boarded windows, abandoned possessions, points to one conclusion. Portlock's people weren't just leaving, they were fleeing a predator. The echoes of their panic linger in the rotting wood. The town is a silent scream frozen in time. The decision to abandon Portlock was not made lightly, nor did it happen overnight. For years, whispers of unease and fear had echoed through the isolated village, growing louder with each passing season. The people of Portlock watched as their once thriving home became a place of dread and uncertainty. By the late 1940s, terror ruled daily life. Children were kept indoors, their laughter silenced by fear, and men refused to hunt or fish alone, wary of the dangers lurking just beyond the tree line. The sense of community was overshadowed by a constant, unspoken anxiety. The authorities offered no help. Tales of monsters and mysterious disappearances were dismissed as superstition or wild imagination. The villagers' pleas for assistance were met with skepticism, leaving them to fend for themselves. With attacks growing bolder and more frequent, the community gathered in tense meetings, realizing that survival meant leaving behind everything they had ever known. The fear was no longer just a rumor, it was a daily reality. In 1950, after months of deliberation and mounting dread, the townspeople made their choice. They would all go. There was no other way to ensure the safety of their families. Families packed what little they could carry, gathering cherished belongings and memories into battered suitcases. They boarded fishing boats in the early morning mist, leaving behind their homes, their livelihoods, and the land that had sustained them for generations. The cannery shut down, the school closed its doors, and the post office processed its last mail. The heart of Portlock stopped beating, its buildings left to the elements and the silence. Boat by boat they left, refugees not from war or famine, but from something far more mysterious. The exodus was somber, marked by uncertainty and sorrow, as families watched their village fade into the fog behind them. By year's end, Portlock was empty, erased from the map. The exodus was complete, and the village was left to be reclaimed by the wilderness, its story whispered only by the wind. An entire community vanished, not by natural disaster or economic collapse, but by a shadow in the woods, an unknown terror that drove them away. Portlock became a ghost town overnight, its haunting silence a testament to the fear that once gripped its people. Since Portlock's abandonment, many have searched for answers. Skeptics blame economic decline or aggressive bears, but these theories don't explain the bipedal tracks or the nature of the attacks. The residents were experienced outdoorsmen, they knew bears, and insisted this was something else. Modern expeditions have searched for DNA evidence, but found only traces of known wildlife. The lack of a body or definitive proof keeps the Nantinak a scientific ghost. The mystery endures. Logic demands proof. But the eyewitness accounts and mass exodus remain compelling. Was it hysteria, misidentified animals, or something unknown? The truth lies somewhere between what can be proven and what the people swore they experienced. 75 years later, Portlock's mystery remains unsolved. Paranormal investigators and scientists still search for evidence, but the creature, if it exists, remains elusive. Descendants of Portlock's residents still speak of the Nantiinak as real, not legend. Local hunters avoid the site, haunted by stories and uneasy feelings. Was it mass hysteria, a misidentified bear, or an unknown primate? Portlock forces us to confront the limits of our understanding. Do we trust the official record, or the chilling testimony of those who fled? The monster that killed a town leaves only a ghost story, and a chilling question mark on Alaska's map.